Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to Behind the Story with Borderless Magazine. I'm Diane Khalil, Borderless Magazine's engagement reporter, and today we're going to be talking to Brian Herrera, who is our illustration fellow at Borderless Magazine. He's also the artist behind our series Postcards from the Border, which is a series of people telling their stories and their experiences from the US-Mexican border. This week's news story is about a Mexican student named Lupita who came to the US and started studying journalism, but now she's homeless due to COVID-19. The story is available in both Spanish and in English, and so please check out the story and Brian's art on borderlessmag.org. While you're there, of course, please do not forget to subscribe to our weekly newsletter to never miss another story. So today we're joined by Brian. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Diana.
So you started as Borderless Magazine's art fellow this summer, and we want our viewers to get to know you more. And so can you tell them a little bit more about yourself and how you got into art?
Yeah, of course. First of all, my name is Brian Herrera. I am an illustrator, a graphic designer. I am based in Chicago. I was born in Veracruz, Mexico. I've been living here since I moved here when I was 11. So half of my life there, half of my life here. Kind of like navigating like this experience as an immigrant, and like trying to do that with my art, sort of like to like sort of represent, first of all, like my community, people of color, queer immigrant community, through my art, but also to sort of like navigate the experience of like immigrant identity and like queer culture. Um, I didn't really get into art like as a like it never was something I wanted to like pursue. I always wanted to be an artist. I never really wanted to be an artist. I kind of got into art as a means of exploring what it means to use like a tool. For example, like with graphic design, you use like all this like software. So I started using a lot of this software to work with like community projects. I was working with a bunch of like community organizations that were like organizing like to sort of inform people about gentrification that was going on in the neighborhood. I grew up in Humboldt Park, or I came to Humboldt Park when I was 11, so I like experienced a lot of the changes in the neighborhood. So I was working with a lot of the community that responded to that, and a lot of that work, that community work, led me to learn these tools that eventually helped me as an artist. And this was all when I was in high school, so I didn't really like wanted to, you know, art was never a thing that I wanted to like get into. Um, so I guess it wasn't until I realized that, well, I guess it wasn't until I realized that what I was doing was actually art. I was doing a lot of like stencil work, um, like we paste, like what you would call like street art, like unsanctioned, like, you know, like street installations. Um, so I really liked like that experience. I like the thrill that I like to express myself in that way. So I began to explore a little bit more about what that meant. And I guess it slowly kind of evolved into me not only growing as an artist, but also growing as a person. Um, and that reflected my work. As far as like what I do as an artist, I didn't really became public about being undocumented until like 2 years ago. And the same thing with like my queerness. I've been also kind of like in the shadows about it. So it was like kind of one of those moments where it's like, um, we're gonna come out, we're gonna come all the way, you know, like we're gonna let everybody know my story, we're gonna share it, we're gonna try to do as much as we can to like ultimately really do inspire like other people that can relate to the story, but also to have something that I wish I could have had when I was in high school. Um, to have those like similar, uh, just the stories, just see stories that you could relate to.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like the reason why I do a lot of my work. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And, I love the work that you're doing for Postcards from the Border. For the past three stories, your art has been amazing. And for our viewers, you better check it out on borderlessmag.org because, a lot of effort goes into it as well. And so, because there's a lot of effort that goes into it, can you tell us a little bit more about the process that goes through making the art from like the start to finish?
Yeah. Um, the process, I feel like it's all about, specifically with like editorial design, like editorial, like illustrations, like a lot of it has to do with, I feel like in the bigger picture, like anything, like when you're gonna work on a project, like it helps to like read the story, it helps to connect who you're making the story about. Um, so the process for me is to get to know the person that we're like gonna be talking about, that we're gonna be representing, read their story. For in this case, for the postcards for from the border, or I read like their interviews, and I usually just like read through like the drafts and stuff, and that really helps me to kind of get an idea of like where they come from and what their story is about. And then from there just kind of like pick a little bit of the pick some of the elements that kind of like stand out to me in the story. For example, like with Maria's story, the fact that she was living homeless, um in her car, and like she was like living in like the border, and like she was like studying journalism. That was like, to me, like that's what I got out of her story, that she really wanted to like communicate with people. So I mean um that's kind of like the process, just like read the story and like illustrate it. Yeah.
Yeah. And what kind of things do you think about when you're making art about undocumented immigrants?
You cut off for like the whole question. You mind repeating it?
Oh, yeah. So, what are some things that you think about when you're doing art about undocumented immigrants?
um I guess when I'm making art about undocumented immigrants, I like to kind of like step out of like um my own experience, and kind of like let their own story kind of like speak for themselves. Like I'm a true believer that like our stories should be told like by ourselves, rather than like by like the media. Like I believe that like our stories are super important to be told by ourselves. So when I'm making art about undocumented immigrants, I guess like I do keep in mind to give space for them to like express themselves, but also I try to like represent them as much as I can, with my art. So I guess I'm still exploring what that really means in one project that like, I guess maybe we'll get into that a little later. But the publication that I have, Crossing Borders Magazine, is sort of an attempt to truly give an undocumented immigrant, specifically an artist, like that space to like truly express themselves.
Hmm. And what do you think the media gets wrong about undocumented immigrants?
There's a whole narrative around it that has been like popular. A lot of that narrative usually revolves around like this mentality that like an immigrant, like usually comes from like a specific background, and an immigrant like is not really educated. Like an immigrant doesn't really know um like how to navigate like this society, like this living society, like, and it's usually like a sort of I can't think of the right word right now, but like it's a negative narrative, but it's also like it kind of makes it like if somebody were to be reading about an immigrant like that's not an immigrant, it kind of like I would feel bad, like if I read like an immigrant story on the media, um like on the mainstream media, like I will feel bad about like this immigrant, like, and that's not really like who we are. We're like hustlers. We like make amazing things. um we're doing like super cool that people's pity. So I feel like a lot of the mainstream media really does like pin us down. um yeah.
Yeah. And you kind of mentioned your publication, Crossing Borders magazine. So can you tell us a little bit about, the story behind your publication?
Yeah, so Crossing Borders magazine, it focuses on, first of all, it focuses on the need for more stories told, made for and by undocumented immigrants, specifically creatives, artists of any kind or of any medium. And it focuses on giving them a space to tell their stories. Um, Specifically, um, like one of the main beliefs behind Crossing Borders magazine is for our stories to never be told for free, right? So like I truly believe that our stories should never be told for free. Like they already are doing it like on the mainstream media. So like we need that relief, we need that help. So a lot of the things that Crossing Borders magazine focuses on is telling people stories, sharing artist stories, but also beyond the narrative of the border itself. I feel like a lot of the stories do navigate around the idea that an immigrant comes from, like the border of Mexico. And I do believe that there's more than that. Obviously, there's immigrants that come from not just the border of Mexico, but also like different parts of the world. So on the first issue for Crossing Borders magazine, we focused on featuring stories from immigrants that didn't necessarily cross the border, immigrants that, specifically immigrant artists that came from
Mhm.
other places like Pacific Island, the Middle East, and like different regions of the world, and kind of like really tell those stories. And also people that you wouldn't quote unquote expect to like be immigrants, and really like put that story up front, and for people to just really see and share the fact that also we are artists, like we are creatives, and we are not, you know we're doing like cool stuff, like people should know about it.
Sure, yeah. And where can our viewers check out your publication?
um you can go to Crossing Borders mag mag.com, or Crossing Borders mag on Instagram.
Mhm. Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing that, Brian. And thank you, everyone, for watching. You just watched Borderless Magazine's Behind the Story with artist Brian Herrera. Please read our series, Postcards from the Border, on borderlessmag.org. The stories are available both in English and in Spanish. And so, yeah, thanks, everyone, and bye.